Hi everyone, welcome to Influence Colorist. Today's video is going to focus on one color palette, two influencers, and 3 pages. The books I'll be working in is Exploratorium by Leigh Melendrez and Disney Silhouettes by Hachette Heroes. I'll be working with markers, Copic, Ohulu, and some Staedtler Fineliners, color pencils by Castle Art, Polychromos, Prisma, and Staedtler Brilliant. Looking for Disney color inspiration, I came across this Lilo and Stitch poster by Tom Whalen. I love the bright, bold colors, and I felt they would work in both books. The colors are easy to convert to the mediums I wanted to use, although not exact duplicates, but close enough. Sometimes I feel like I watch more YouTube coloring than I actually color. If you're like me, you've probably been influenced by a book review or a color along from these ladies. Color with Claire does awesome reviews and tutorials. Anytime I want a peek at a new coloring book or I'm trying to find something new to color, I can always count on her channel. I first discovered Erin K. Designs and the Exploratorium coloring book with her top 10 desert island coloring books. I liked her idea of doing the aliens all in one color within a page and their surrounding world in other colors. It made it sound fun and less intimidating. Disney Silhouettes Magique is in my top 5 books in quarantine video and one I'm currently working in. I'm not a Disney collector, but for some reason I thought this book looked really unique and different, and that's usually what draws me in. It's turning out to be one of my favorites. Coloring goes pretty quick, and it's fun to pick the color palettes for Disney. This is a Bug's Life page I did. It was a color palette challenge by Color with Claire. And even though you can see the silhouette of the characters before you color it, it really pops when you finish coloring. Alright, I'll be coloring the stitch page with markers. Here's the color palette again, main colors on top with some supplemental colors below. I'm not real happy with the orange selection in the markers, but we'll see how it works together. These are single-sided pages and thin, so make sure you put a protector behind. I'll zoom in here a little bit, and I'm going to do a few of these shapes, and then I'll finish off camera and show you the finished page and a little bit of a review. So there are a lot of little designs all condensed and overlapped into this tight space. That can make it tricky to figure out what shape is what. Okay, so I'm going to begin with this little alien guy here. And I'm taking the blue, kind of more of a periwinkle color, and I'm going to outline him and then fill in the shapes. I can already tell on coloring on this page that the paper isn't the best for markers, at least the alcohol-based markers. It has a little bit of a bleed, like I have to be really careful. Even as I'm outlining, I can see it kind of running over the black line. Most of these are going to be just straight regular coloring, outline, filling in with a solid color. A few of the flowers and a couple of the other little characters, I'll be blending colors, so I'll show you how to do those too. All right, I'll give them a dark purple nose. And these little horns. And then a big purple belly. Okay, I'm going to take one of my fine liners and I'm just going to get into these itty bitty shapes here. So for my flower, I'm going to use 3 different shades of pink. I'm going to take my lightest shade first and do kind of just an overall base coat with it. So outline and then fill in. You don't need to fill in all the way because I'm going to be overlapping some darker colors towards the center. All right, then taking the darkest pink, more of the magenta color pink, I'm going to go from the center of the flower, kind of working around those little yellow spiky centers, and just roughly doing kind of a rough lines into the petal of the flower. And then to blend all of that out, I'm taking my medium pink color and I'm just going to go over where the dark and the light meet and blend those together. So it works best when the alcohol markers are a little bit wet or the paper's a little bit wet to help blend. So that's why I kind of go over with a base coat first, hoping that it stays a little bit wet for that second layer and then the third layer to blend. And just take that fine liner again and kind of work into those little creases. All right, for these flourishes, I'm going to take pink again. I'm going to take my lightest color. These are some of the tightest lines, so I'm not going to try to go through every flourish end to end. I'm just going to try to get those wider parts with this bullet tip nib. And I'll find a magenta color fine liner and just get in those really tight lines. It's hard to see on camera, but there's some really, really tight lines here. The fine liner fits in perfectly. Just a little bit darker than my original pink color, but I'll try to blend those out as best as I can with the bullet nib. The way the ink is kind of bleeding out, there's no way I would be able to get into these little tiny places without it coming over the line. Okay, so for these petals, like I said earlier, I wasn't really happy with the orange selection, so I'm going to experiment a little bit here. I'm taking the fluorescent yellow as my base shape. I've noticed in other books that I've done, the fluorescent yellow is a good blending color to help kind of brighten up greens or oranges. And then I'm going to take this fluorescent orange. It really was the only light orange in my color choices for these markers. There was a lot of golden-y colors and then it went straight to like a red orange, but I never found any like in between light orange color. So I'm just placing this fluorescent orange over the yellow, leaving the tips, the ends of the petals, the yellow. And then I'm going to take the yellow again and go over the whole petal, kind of blending in. It darkens it up a little bit, not making it too brown, but I'm coloring outside and it's looking very fluorescent. So I may have to experiment with a different yellow. And the center of the flower will be this kind of reddish orange color. Okay, for these big paint splatters, I want the center to be lighter and the edges to be darker. So I'm going to start with this lighter lavender color, and I'm going to outline around all these shapes first. All right, and then I'll just bring down some of these edges where I won't be able to fit the bigger nib in. And I noticed when I opened this, it had a big kind of dried, kind of chunky, dried up ink on the end, and the marker is feeling a little dry, so that's kind of a bummer. But I'm going to fill in all this space. As you can see, most of the alcoholic markers kind of blend really good, or don't have all the line. You can't see all the marker lines. Or because this one's drying out a little bit, you're going to see more of the marker lines. Okay, now I'm going to take my darkest purple and I'm going to outline around all these squiggly little lines, the ends of the paint splatter. I'm not going to stress too much about all the little branches that come off of it or the little teeny tiny areas. I'll hit those with a fine liner. And we really don't see the end of the other side of this paint splatter, so I'm just doing this part. And then I'm going to take my bluish color, and that is what I'm going to kind of bleed out or blend into that lavender color. So I'm going to try to grab some of that darker purple while it's still wet and bring it into the light, blending it with the blue. Working pretty fast so the marker or the ink on the page is still a little wet. Again, this paper isn't the best for the alcohol markers. It's kind of drying, I guess, to the marker. And then I'll take the lavender again and blend all those together. All right, now I'll take the fine liner and I'll just go into all those little bits of the paint splatter that's coming out. Some of these pages have bigger splatters and some of them are these little tiny ones, so each one's just a little bit different. All right, this is not a flower, it is also a paint splatter, just a smaller version and more rounded, not so choppy on the edges. So again, I'm going to take my lighter purple first, fill in the shape, and then I'll take the darker purple, outline it. And then the blue will be to blend that out. Leaving the middle the lightest part, and then taking that lighter purple, working it all the way on top of both of those colors. This flower is just going to be regular coloring. I'm just going to choose a dark orange for it, outline, and then fill in the shape. All right, for this little bird character, I had to look up to see what color he was, and he or she is pink. So it worked well with my color scheme. It's gonna have light pink eyes and light pink body, and the wings are gonna be mostly this light color, pink. So I'll go all the way except for a little stripe at the top, which will be a dark pink. All right, then my next color will be a more medium pink, and that is going to be the ends here of the tail, and it's going to be that top stripe on the wing. And his head and half of his little head feathers. Okay, so this is the light pink. I'm just blending in the dark to the light. And he has a little lavender beak. And then I'm going to take the darkest pink, the magenta color, and that's going to be the very tops of his head feathers and the little ends of his tail feather. Next, I'll be coloring the leaves, and they're going to be this lighter green color. It's not in the main colors, but I felt like it needed some different shades of greens just to kind of help break up some of the shapes. So again, I'm having a little difficulty around some of the little tiny circles inside because the markers just seem to want to bleed into those shapes. And then for the tree, overall it's going to be this lighter teal color. It was the closest I can find to that mint color. So again, this is more just straight coloring. Fill in some of these areas. I'll stop here and I'll finish off camera. Then I'll come back and we'll look at the finished page. Okay, here is the final page. I took the light blue, which is my Copic marker, and I just kind of traced around all the edges and also some of the white spaces that were kind of in between shapes. Sometimes it's hard to decipher if it's, a shape or if it's empty space. So I took that light blue, and that way it helps kind of fill in the silhouette of the design too. The good, I really love the colors. I think they're nice and vibrant. They work well together. Oh, and I did use a more goldeny color yellow instead of the fluorescent yellow and put that on top of those lighter orange flowers. It didn't make the flowers as light orange as I wanted, but they weren't fluorescent looking anymore. So that was one thing I did. The paper, I would say, is not the best for alcohol markers. It wasn't horrible, but you just had to be careful with the bleed. And they didn't want to lay down on the paper as well. I felt like it was kind of scratchy, almost drying for the paper. And it's really tight spaces in some areas. So unless you have some fine liners, it might be really hard to get into those areas. But overall, it was still fun to do. and I'm ready for the next one. Okay, so here's Exploratorium, although now I believe it is labeled Fright and Seek. So it features these fun little doodle characters that, well, they're aliens, and they've kind of taken over this universe. This page I copied from Erin K Designs. I just loved how she did it, and I wanted that experience of how you color the aliens one color, and then the rest of it other colors. So once I got the hang of it and kind of knew what I was doing and if I liked that style, then I went ahead and did my own designs, keeping the aliens consistent, one color per page, and then the background, the other colors. What I tend to do is I look through color palettes, find a color palette I like, and whatever the dominant color is, that is usually the alien color. So if there's a color I really want to stand out, then that's the color I make the aliens. All right, so here's the color palette I'll be working with. I'm going to be using color pencils, and the top row again is my main color with just a few other colors to create depth and highlights and shadows down below. So this is that Staedtler Brilliant pencil. It's actually 2 colors in one, and then I'll be using Castle Art color pencils, Prisma colors, and Polychromos. My 2 favorites are Polychromos and Prisma, but I have this Castle Art set and these Staedtler pencils that, you know, sometimes there's just the color that you need in those sets. So I went with those. Hey, this is a double page spread, and I'm counting it as 2 pages. All right, I will zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to start with the structures here, though this is like a brick wall around the pool. I'm going to start with a kind of a light goldeny yellow, and I'm just going to do it really lightly, a nice base coat over all of this. Okay, I'm taking kind of more of a medium tone orange, and I'm going to go over all the outlines of the brick, bringing the color in towards the center, but not all the way to the center. Again, this is just really lightly. I'm just building the color, going a little bit heavier into the shadow areas. Okay, now I'm taking one of the darker oranges and I'm filling in these shadows. I'm going to press a little bit harder. Each layer I'm just pressing a little bit harder to get that blend with the colors. Concentrating more on the edges of each brick and kind of coming into the corners a little bit. So I thought the back side of the pool should be a little bit darker, not necessarily, you know, a complete shadow, but a little bit darker than, say, the top of the pool. That one's going to be the brightest. All right, and then I'll take my golden color here and work again a little bit harder pressure, blending into those colors. Gives it a nice sunlit glow. And doing the kind of medium orange, light to medium orange, I'm going to go through just to darken it up just a little bit. I want the more dominant color to be orange looking instead of yellow, so I felt like it was a little too yellow, so I'm just going to kind of hit over these areas, making sure it's not too yellow. So for the grass, I'm going to start with this Staedtler teal color, and again I'm going to go really lightly for my first layer. The grass is going to be actually 3 layers. I'm just going to do it real light all over coloring. Okay, now I'm going to take my Castle Art, it's a light green color, and again really lightly going over all of that first color. All right, now I'm going to use my white Prismacolor, and it blends these two colors nicely. It does leave this white kind of cloudiness to the color, which is fine if you like that softness. It does blend it really well. It gives me that minty color I was looking for, but it doesn't really do anything to give me the texture of grass. So once I finish that, then I'll go back over with the different greens and give it some texture. I love how the Prismacolors blend, and especially this white one. It's probably one of my favorites that I use all the time for blending colors together, and it works well with other brands too, not just Prismacolor. So now I'm taking my green color again, and I'm just going to do short little strokes hitting all those little grass lines. And adding a few shadows here and there, some darker patches in the grass. And coming back in with that lighter teal color, kind of doing the same thing, going over a lot of that darker green, just again, those short little strokes over the grass just to give it some more texture. All right, so my little alien creatures are going to be the magenta color. I wanted most of my page to have these nice, bright, warm colors. So that's why most of the structures, walls and stone will be orange. And then my little alien characters, they're all going to be this magenta color. So I start with my mid-tone magenta first, and I press harder on these shadowy areas and then get lighter pressure towards the middle or top of each character. The highlight is going to come from above. Okay, now I'm going to take the pink end of that color pencil and I'm going to work through that darker shade and blend again towards the middle, pressing hard pressure into that darker pink and then lighting up the pressure towards the middle. I can definitely tell a difference of quality with this pencil. It's a lot scratchier on the page, a lot more drawing, and I have to, do a lot of pressure in order to feel like I'm blending anything. This is the darkest color magenta, more like a burgundy color, and this is where I'm going to go into those tight kind of shadow areas. And this just helps give a nice contrast to the other colors, creating that nice shadow line. more blending. Okay, now I'm going back to my golden color and I'm just going to hit on some of these lightest spots here. And this will just add that little sun glow that I love to add. Just at some of those lightest areas. And instead of leaving these white outlines around the black, I'm going to use this kind of more periwinkle blue color, and that will be the outline. All right, for the water, I'll be using the Prismacolor, this lighter blue shade, and the Polychromo, more periwinkle color, and then the Staedtler teal color. Water is probably the trickiest thing for me to do. I don't know, I just never feel like it looks right when I do it. So anyway, I'm just gonna go over all of the water in this lightest blue shade. Again, the Prismacolor leaves kind of this waxy, kind of cloudy look, but they do blend well together. Then I'm going to take my blue shade and I'm just going to kind of hit underneath some of these wave splashes and darken up around some of the lines. All right, and then I'll take this light teal and I'm going to concentrate it around more of the edges of these objects. or towards the center of the water. And I kind of just play around with it, going back and forth between that teal and darker blue color. Trying to leave some areas white. I might have to go through with my electric eraser and just hit some of the tops of the water. But I'll go around the edges with the darker blue color and blend out. All right, now for this kind of mountainy stone structure in the background, I'm going to do kind of the same technique I did for the pool surround, although instead of starting with the golden color, I'm starting with the lighter orange, and I'm just going through doing that light base coat over all the stones. Okay, then taking the darker orange and going through all the little creases, concentrating heavier on the sides of where the shadows would be. So the center is going to stay the lightest and the edges will be darker, but still getting into all these little crevices and creases in the stone. And then I'll come back and use that golden color, help blend those colors together. And to really emphasize those shadows and nice contrast, I'm going to take that dark burgundy color, again getting it through all those little creases of the stone, and then concentrating the shadow on that right side. All right, I'm going to finish this up. I'll finish off camera and then I'll come back and show you the finished page. Okay, here it is complete. And I think this color palette worked really well with the theme. You have the warmth of the structures, the oranges, and then the alien creatures being this magenta color. And then you have the cool colors of the green and the blue, so everything really stands out and pops. I had fun creating the smoke look, the smoke coming out of that burning grill. And the water actually turned out better than I thought it was going to be. I did use the electric eraser to help bring out some of the white and some white Posca pens just to highlight some of the tips of the water. Each alien creature is unique and different, but staying consistent with one color really helps make it go by faster. And it's less intimidating. You don't have to think so much about what each one is going to look like. I think because the page can look very busy, there's a lot going on, it helps to keep it uniform when you use one color for the aliens. This is a search and find book also. So over here they have the little characters that you're supposed to look for, and I just leave those white. And the only negative I would say is the color pencil, the Staedtler color pencil. The pink went by really fast because I have to press really hard to get that blend. So as you can see, I pretty much wore it down on this whole page. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you're staying safe and keep coloring.